jelly. I need some mead. Mead is what I need. Sundowner in the garden time. Welcome to this virtual lime. Greetings from sunny Tobago with the rainforest where bees echo. So kiss me, honey, honey, kiss me. Trill me, honey, honey, trill me. With royal jelly you can fill my cup. Oh, honey, honey, aha, don't stop. Sing the chorus. Kiss me, honey, honey, kiss me. Trill me, honey, honey, trill me. With royal jelly, fill my cup. Honey, honey, aha, don't stop. Welcome bees for development. Duchess of Cornwall, first president. Martha Bill, Monty, Tom, Anita Sting. Patrons and guests shout and sing. Kiss me, honey, honey, kiss me. Trill me, honey, honey, trill me. With royal jelly you can fill my cup. So honey, honey, aha, don't stop. Sing the chorus. Kiss me, honey, honey, kiss me. Trill me, honey, honey, trill me. With royal jelly, fill my cup. Honey, honey, aha, don't stop. Zoom to my bee safari. Tobago bloom, say let's party. You'll thrive on my floral cuisine. I've serenade the queen. Kiss me, honey, honey, kiss me. Thrill me, honey, honey, thrill me. With royal jelly you can fill my cup. So honey, honey, aha, don't stop. Sing the chorus. Kiss me, honey, honey, kiss me. Thrill me, honey, honey, thrill me. With royal jelly, fill my cup. Honey, honey, aha, don't stop. Roses red, violets blue. Come, let me pollinate you. Flower power, hurry home. Happy hour, my honeycomb. Kiss me, honey, honey, kiss me. Trill me, honey, honey, trill me. With royal jelly you can fill my cup. So honey, honey, aha, don't stop. Sing the chorus. Kiss me, honey, honey, kiss me. Trill me, honey, honey, trill me. With royal jelly, fill my cup. Honey, honey, aha, don't stop. These for biodiversity help to alleviate poverty. It's a fundraiser, give generously. Your pounds and your dollars sweeten this story. Money, kiss me, honey, honey, kiss me. Trill me, honey, honey, trill me. With royal jelly you can fill my cup. Oh, honey, honey, aha, don't stop. Sing the chorus. Kiss me, honey, honey, kiss me. Trill me, honey, honey, trill me. Royal jelly, fill my cup. Honey, honey, aha, don't stop. With your currency, fill the coffers up. Honey, honey, aha, don't stop. Now I need some mead to free me up. Honey, honey, aha, don't stop. Raise your glasses, bottoms up. Honey, honey, aha, don't stop. 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 Honey, honey, aha, don't stop.
Welcome everybody. Welcome and good evening. Welcome to Bees for Development's Bee Art class this evening. First of all, I just want to let everybody know that the event is being recorded and streamed on YouTube. So if you don't want to be seen on YouTube, you can keep your video off. However, otherwise, we'd really like to see you all and to wave and say hello. So please, if you're willing, you can put your camera on so we can see you. Ah, that's better. That's great. Welcome. Welcome, everybody. So first of all, I'd like to acknowledge the music. Tobago Pleasure Pirates. We're not in Tobago. We're actually in, most of us, at least Bees for Development, we're in Monmouth in South Wales. Hello. So just say again, good evening. My name is Janet. I'm Janet Lawore. I'm the Programme Manager for Bees for Development, and I'd like to welcome you all to our Bee Art class this evening. And before we begin, I'd just like to ask my colleagues from Bees for Development to wave as well. So that's Richard, Giacomo, Milan. Who else is here? Sean is hiding there somewhere. And I see Bob, one of our wonderful trustees. So we've organised this event this evening to say a big thank you to all our wonderful and fantastic people who support us regularly, and particularly those who've supported our Green Match Appeal, our current fundraising appeal. And for those of you who don't know Bees for Development, who you're new to Bees for Development, we'd like to welcome you, and we thought this would be a good event, a good opportunity for us to meet you and for you to find out more about us. So I'll say a few more words about Bees for Development for those of you who don't know us. We're a UK-based charity that works to bring the benefits of beekeeping to some of the world's poorest people. And we do this by providing skills and knowledge in accessible and sustainable beekeeping, helping people navigate markets and sell their products so they can earn good income. We provide access to information and training resources. We know that beekeeping can make a real difference to people's lives, giving them the income they need to pay for school fees, to buy food and medicines. We all owe so much to wonderful bees. So a bit more about our event this evening. Just to remind that the event is being recorded, so if you don't want to have your face shown, then you can keep your video off, but otherwise you're very welcome to put your video on. Right now we're raising funds for a beekeeping project in Ghana, which is providing, it's not only helping people, but it's also helping wildlife. And for those of you who have already donated to our Green Match Appeal, thank you very much. We'd also, if you haven't yet donated, please consider doing so if you can. It's a match fund appeal, which means that every donation is matched pound for pound, and we still have match funds available. We'll be showing you a video about our work in Ghana a bit later on in the evening. Now to the art class. The art class is going to be delivered by the wonderful Lyn Sykes. And the way it works is that we're going to show you a mix of PowerPoint slides and videos of Lyn painting. And she's going to talk us through and showing and explaining each step. You're invited to use the chat function, and you can tell us who you are, where you are, something about your beekeeping. Maybe any interest and experiences you've got with bee art, with drawing and painting, or to ask questions. Please just use the chat, and we'll also convey your questions to Lyn or other members of the team. We'll have some breaks throughout the evening. So we'll tell you more about our work, give you a chance to ask Lyn some questions. And maybe if, for those of you who might be drawing along or painting along, you can even show us your artwork, if you like. I think now all it really remains is for me to introduce Lyn properly. So Lyn is a master beekeeper with a diploma in botanical painting from the Chelsea Physic Garden. Lyn's expertise in art is mainly in the area of botanical drawing and painting. And Lyn is also an artist with the Bath Society of Botanical Painters. As a keen beekeeper, her interest in plants overlaps with her interest in bees and other insects as well, which makes her well placed to be our instructor this evening. Lyn started volunteering for Bees for Development in 2006 and has been a stalwart and supporter and helper of Bees for Development ever since, and we are very grateful to her. So I'd like now to welcome Lyn. And Lyn is going to start the class, and after a few minutes we'll have the first break. But over to you then, Lyn. Hi, Lyn, you're on mute, Lyn.
Thank you, Janet, very much. And thank you, everybody, for joining BFD for this talk. I understand some of you are going to be painting alongside, which is really great. So let's get started. My mission is to encourage you to paint bees. Because of their beautiful colours, butterflies get all the headlines. But there are many fascinating bumblebees and solitary bees for you to investigate. And of course, the honeybee, which we're looking at today. I'll be finishing with some short videos, but let's take a close look at the honeybee first with a painterly eye. Next, please. There are 3 types of bee in the hive. I'm talking to the painters here, not the beekeepers. The queen, of course, is female, only 1 per hive. She lays all the eggs and is mother to all the bees in the hive. And she lives for 4 to 5 years. On the left, we've got the drone. The drones are male, 200 to 300 in the hive in the peak of the season, and they live for 3 or 4 months over the summer. On the right, we've got the worker bees, who of course are female, and there can be 50 to 60,000 of them in the hive in summer. They're very industrious. They clean the hive, they feed the larvae, they make wax, manipulating comb into the hexagons that are used for food storage and as a nursery for the young bees. And they collect nectar and pollen. The queen stays put in the hive. The drones are only interested in flying out looking for young queens. And so the bees that you see on the flowers are going to be the worker bees. They get all the forage and bring it back for the benefit of the whole hive. Thank you. So let's take a closer look at some of the features of the worker bee. As painters, you know, it's just observation, observation. And I'm just going to through 1 to 6, which is something we do in our beginner beekeeping class. So the bee's got 1 sting. It's tucked in at the back of the abdomen and it doesn't stick out in a cartoon fashion. The bee has 2 antennae. They're segmented, they're jointed. They come out from the front of the face about halfway down, not from the top, as you sometimes see people drawing. Being an insect, the bee has 3 segments. So we've got the head, the thorax, and the abdomen. And the head is largely to do with senses, smell, touch, sight, and of course, mandibles and mouth parts for eating. The thorax is all muscle. It's the powerhouse of the bee, it's the flight muscles, and it's for walking, legs and wings attached. And I particularly want you to think about the back leg, which many people seem to think comes from the abdomen, maybe because it's concealed by a lot of hairs a lot of the time, but all three legs come from the abdomen. All three legs come from the thorax. The abdomen is largely concerned with digestion and kidney function, but right at the front here is the honey sac. So the bee collects nectar from the bees and carries it in this honey sac back to the hive. The bee has 4 wings, 2 pairs, a larger forewing and a smaller hind wing. And when the bee is flying, these are connected by little hooks about 2/3 along the way, along the length of the wing, so that it is joined and is best for the flight. But when the bee goes into the hive, there's quite a lot of congestion. These wings are unhooked and neatly laid across the back of the bee, and they can get their heads right down in the cells where they're feeding larvae or maybe packing pollen. So very flexible. And the bee has 5 eyes, surprisingly. 2 large compound eyes each side of the head. But right at the top, if you look at this little drawing at the top here, there's 3 primitive eyes which just pick up light. And lastly, 6 legs. 3 pairs, each with different specialities. 3 large segments followed by 3 tiny ones and a long one leading to claws. The claws are used when they're walking on a textured surface, and those claws will flatten down to the pads underneath if they're walking on a hard, shiny surface. But of most interest to us is this middle section on the back leg where the bee packs pollen and carries it back to the hive. It grooms pollen grains which get all over its furry body when it's in the middle of the flower, knocking against the stamens. And so you often see the bee just rise off the flower, pause a minute, and at that point is grooming all the pollen grains and collecting them in the pollen basket, and you see these coloured balls of pollen on their back legs. From a painter's point of view, you will be noticing that the exoskeleton of the bee is really quite shiny. So we've got shine on the legs, we've got shine on the eyes and antennae, down the side of the abdomen usually, although sometimes that's just reflection of a photographer's flash, and very reflective wings, which aren't easy to paint. Thank you. So bees collect nectar, we know. That's the carbohydrate and energy for their flight. But they also collect pollen, and we need to make sure that the pollen matches the flower, because if you look here, we've got a plum blossom and a pear blossom, very similar, but look at the difference in the colour of the pollen. So the plum is quite grey, and you can see it gathered on the back leg here. Here's a bee flying to a crocus. You can see the stamens there and the colour on the legs. And this is what my hive looks like at the moment, full of bees coming back with orange pollen because so many dandelions out just at the moment. And the bees store pollen in separate little cells in the hive, and they store it right next to the nest where the young bees are going to need this great protein source for their growth. Thank you. There are even books to tell beekeepers and help them identify different colours of pollen, mainly because beekeepers are always very interested to know what plants their honey comes from. Thank you. And there are certainly some flowers that bees don't visit, and a lot of it depends on the length of their tongues. Honeybees have quite medium to shortish tongues, 6 millimeters in length, and they'll be looking at this red campion and thinking, no, I can't reach that nectar that's at the bottom of the corolla behind the flower. The sort of bee that will be pollinating the red campion are these larger bumblebees. This is the garden bumblebee, and it has a tongue length of 12 millimeters, double the size of the honeybee. Some flowers here have really long corollas. We've got plumbago there, and we've got honeysuckles in this drawing here. And the insects that will pollinate those are going to be moths and butterflies, which have particularly long, slender tongues. So not all bees visit all flowers, and is one reason why they're all so precious to us. But in the case of the foxglove on the left, the inside of the foxglove flowers are very slippery, and our little bees can't fly up because the diameter of the flower is too small for the honeybees to fly in, and they're too small to walk up. So this white-tailed honeybee, the white-tailed bumblebee, is going to be the pollinator here. They're bigger bees altogether, and they stick their legs out sideways and walk up with their bees sticking out completely sideways to the bee. Thank you. There's all sorts of reasons you might be painting bees. Pen and ink has been a traditional method of illustration, and certainly before books were able to publish with colour illustrations in them, it's been the black and white has been the stalwart of the illustrations there, and certainly still is in illustrating scientific publications, nature notes or anything like that. And I would strongly suggest, if you like doing pen and ink, that you use a waterproof ink, because you might want to do some shading or a bit of colour later, and you don't want the ink, black ink, sludging into the colour that you're painting on. The surface for pen and ink, Bristol board is a really good surface for using pen and ink. It's quite hard and almost a little bit shiny, and gives a really crisp line when you're painting on it. And when people are doing scientific drawings, they're quite often indicating how many times magnification they've drawn at, so that people understand the size of the original insect. So you might see something like ×3 or ×1.5 on the drawing, which is what it's indicating. There's lots of pens available, and lots of manufacturers that you'll recognise in the stationery shops. 0.5 is a kind of medium one to use, and when you get to 0.01 size nib, then you're getting to a really fine line. And dip pens also are really nice because you get a variable line on them. If you're trying to draw something looking down on the dorsal side, it's much easier to use tracing paper to get a balance. So if you do a line down the center of your paper and draw half the insect, and this might be a ladybird or a grasshopper, draw half an insect, which you might do by measurements or you might do by eye, put some tracing paper on and reproduce the line and draw round the bee that you've already done. Then if you remove the tracing paper and turn it over, the pencil is underneath, and if you draw over that, you've got a really nice, balanced, even drawing that you can use to get your pen and ink over, and probably labelling and that sort of thing. It's just a nifty little trick to do that dorsal view. You might be interested in doing cartoons. Great for illustrating stories and for engaging children. Great fun, amusing, imaginative, and certain parts will be exaggerated for effect. So all that I've been saying goes out of the window, and you can cheerfully ignore the anatomy. The one here top right has got antennae coming from the top of the head. Wrong. Blobs on the end of the antennae. Wrong, because that's a feature of butterflies. We've got no thorax. We've got one pair of wings, legs all over the place, and a sting. But hey, it's really fun, and people recognize what you're illustrating. And as I said, you're exaggerating for effect. And if you are going to do cartoon strips, I strongly recommend that you plan the whole strip before you start doing detailed drawings, as you're really going to make hard work for yourself. I'm going to hand over now to Milan, our colleague for Bees for Development, to talk about this cartoon in the centre at the bottom by Boris Johnson.
Yes, thank you, Lyn. So, hi everybody. As you can see in the middle, there is a bee drawn by Boris Johnson for Bees for Development, and we will be selling a limited number of this drawing as a digital version, as a so-called NFT. I know NFTs, you might have seen it in the news on The Guardian about this Beeble artwork sold via Christie's for $69 million. We're probably not going to get that amount. However, this is an NFT. I won't go too much into detail, but it's like a digital certification that you have one of the 200 editions. So we will be selling them. You might be interested, or you might not be interested. However, if you sign up for a newsletter, you know when and where to buy one. So yeah, that's it. And I'll hand back over to Lyn.
Thank you. So when you're painting bees, of course, it's much better to do it from life. And you're obviously going to need a magnifying glass, or this is a low power microscope where you place the bee on the stage here, twist the black cone, and that will give you the multiplication. So you might be looking at it ×5 or ×10, and eyepieces here which you can focus. But where are you going to find these bees? Well, you might be finding insects as you're walking around, sadly deceased on the pathway. You might have access to pinned bees, perhaps from a local school or local beekeeping association. Museums often have cases of pinned insects which you can sit and draw, or you can learn to pin bees from YouTube videos. And the next, please.
I think, are we going to have a short break now, Lyn?
I thought there was one more, sorry.
Oh, one more, sorry. I'm interrupting, I'm getting ahead of myself.
But your main source of ideas and materials for painting bees is going to be photographs, because they move so quickly. And if you're going to use your smartphone to take photographs, then it's a really great idea. Perhaps some of you remember the days when you could only buy film for cameras with 36 or 24 shots on it, and you had to pay for everyone to be developed. But on your smartphone, you can take masses of photographs and then rigorously delete all that you don't want and all that are out of focus. So if you're just kind of holding your camera, leaning in slowly to the insect, taking shots as you lean in, then you're more likely to get a photo of the bee before it zooms off to the next flower. Another option with a smartphone is to use the slow motion video setting, slow-mo, where you can get some quite interesting pictures of bees landing, taking off, packing the pollen in, and that sort of thing. So slow motion is really exciting to watch. But keep deleting any photos you don't want, and I find that if I've had a session looking at some ivy or something with bees on it. If I come away with 3 or 4 really good ones, then I'm pleased. And if you are illustrating a particular bee or flower, and searching the internet for information, doing a little more research, I strongly suggest you put the Latin names in, because there's so much rubbish on the internet that you'll get inaccurate results. So Latin names of the flowers or the insects, and you'll get much more clearer results, much more accurate. And on the whole, I think you'll find that your bees and your paintings are either going to be pretty small, or you have to really move in and crop your large flowers. Okay, Janet, over to you.
Thank you, Lynn. That's a really, really fascinating introduction to the beginnings of our bee art class. I think somehow I missed that really important lesson in my beekeeping class, the 1 to 6. I don't know where I can't have been listening on that day. 1 sting, 2 honey. How useful! I've never realised that before. So thank you, Lynn. Some really good tips there. The importance of matching up the colour of the pollen on the bee's legs with the colour of the pollen that they're visiting, the flower that they're visiting. The importance of observation always. Close observation. We might make assumptions that we think we know what a bee looks like, or even a flower looks like, but it's not until you really scrutinize at that close level do we realize that some of our we maybe have these misconceptions. So thank you, Lynn. So for any of you who have just joined, welcome to Bees for Development's art class this evening. An event celebrating bees and flowers. It's an opportunity for us to say thank you to everybody who supports Bees for Development and has donated to our Green Match appeal. We're raising funds to support bees and wildlife in Ghana. And if you've not yet donated, now is a great opportunity. All donations made this evening will be matched pound for pound. So a donation of £30 will be doubled to 60. Together with gift aid brings a donation to about £67 going towards alleviating poverty and helping wildlife in Ghana. So thank you very much to everybody for joining us, and I'm going to hand back to Lynn, who's going to take us through the intricacies of drawing and painting a bee on a flower.
Thank you. So I've now got to the stage where I'm selecting a photo. I've decided that it's going to be a greetings card that I'm painting. I've chosen this particular photograph because there were nice, small, simple flowers on it. But when you look closely, the bee is in really good focus, but the flowers aren't so clear. So I did my Latin search, because when I just put in flowering currant, which is what this is, I got, when I put in red currant, all I got was lots of bright pink flowering currant pictures. And when I put in the Latin name, then it started getting more realistic photos of the red currant. And one of them was this lovely line drawing, which was a great help because I wasn't quite sure how the stamens were connected to the petals. And when you look closely here, you can see that they actually join the base of the petal and grow out of it. And another thing which I noticed is that the stigma, the female part of the flower, is split into two. So my drawing is probably a bit too small to do that on, but it all adds to the whole and understanding of the flower. And this one makes it clear that there's some little pink bits. You can see them there, but it's not very clear on all of them unless you look closely. There's a little bit of pink on the edge of the flowers. So that was all quite helpful. Thank you. So here we go. Just start playing around with some sketches, just trying to sort out a composition. Just quick and kind of lively, really. You just want to keep a nice shape going. I eventually decided on the fourth one here, so I did a bit more detail on it. And then I went to my sketchbook And I was thinking in terms of my card being an A5 sheet in half, so this portrait shape. But when I started looking at it, one of the flowers had its back turned in the middle, so it kind of broke it up a bit, and there was quite a big space here. And I actually decided I preferred the square shape I started with. So off we go. And the first thing then is a pencil drawing. I liked pencil drawing on your paper, and beginning to start. But a little look at my workplace first. So just a desk in a room where I've got things like a drawing board and tape to tape my paper to the board when I'm drawing. This is my sketchbook here and my original photograph that I'm looking at. The paper I would paint on for watercolor is called hot press. So you get a clean line on it. It's not absorbent or blotty, and the weight is quite heavy. It feels quite cardish, 300 grams to the square meter, which means that when you're putting a water wash on, it's not going to buckle. My watercolor paints here, you can get watercolors from any good art shop, and you get them in tubes or in these little square things called pans. Brushes, I'm using quite small brushes because I'm painting very small on this occasion. The most important thing about brushes is that they come to a good point, and that's really worth checking when you buy them. And they can be quite expensive sable ones or less expensive synthetic brushes. You just want a bit of spring on them so that when you're painting they spring back to shape afterwards. I use a cheap brush. I don't use my nice sable brushes for mixing the paint. I use a cheap brush for just mixing up the paints in the first place and wetting the pans and getting them all off into the palette there. I use 2 pots of water, one to clean the dirty brushes and then clean it again in the clean one. Pencil, rubber and sharpener. And when we're painting in watercolor, we're working from white surfaces, starting pale and then gradually getting darker and darker. And if you want to retain some white paper within the dark shapes you're painting, it's nice and easy to use masking fluid. You can just draw around a white shape that you're going to paint around, but masking fluid is really useful, and a lot of people are a bit concerned about using it on their brushes because you can ruin a brush very easily. But I'm just showing you here, the secret is to soap your bristles on your brush in either shampoo or liquid hand washing fluid first, and that keeps it free of masking fluid up between the bristles. So there I am rubbing in the soapy fluid which protects the bristles. The blue is the masking fluid, which I'm just putting a couple of drops of water on to dilute it, mixing it with my brush and applying it to the paper. You're going to let it dry, do your painting over and around it, and then at a certain point during the painting of the picture, you can remove it by rubbing it away, and then you've got your white paper that you can either blend in or paint a different type of thing over. But the most important thing is that you clean your brush within about a minute of finishing, and there you can see I've got a lovely point still, and I haven't ruined it with all the rubbery bits up between the bristles. So here we go. We've got a nice little faint drawing, and if you can see the shape of the bee there, I'm just applying the masking fluid down the side of the abdomen where there's going to be a shine, along the legs and the eye of the bee, so that I can paint round and leave a lighter space there where the shiny bits are going to be. And because the stamens were lighter against a dark background, I'm doing those in as well. So as I said before, the way watercolors are done is by starting very, very pale and gradually adding darker and darker colors. So one very important thing is that you let the paint dry between adding the next layers on it. So at this point, the masking fluid is dry, so I'm just adding the very palest wash. So we've got flowers, we've got the bee, and we've got leaves at the top. So the very palest underlying colour in each one. So the yellow for the flowers, a sort of beige for the bees, and there'll be some green underneath. And at this point, I begin to be able to see the painting. It's like it's coming out of the fog somehow. It's absolutely white, and then it gradually appears and you're just darkening the edges. So I'm just getting the stems of the flowers in there. Oh no, we've gone to the bee, right. You're going to be aware of where your light source is. So in this case, I'm assuming that the light is coming from the top left corner. And on the whole, with any painting, you're trying to reduce a 3-dimensional subject into 2 dimensions. And the light source and the subsequent shading really does help do that 3D effect. Quite often I'm using 2 brushes because if you want colours to run into each other a little bit, if you dampen the area with clear water first and then you get the colours on, you can get quite nice mixes and shading as you go. So we're getting our very first layers in now, and as I say, just beginning to see the shape of the painting. Some greys coming in where the much darker blacks and dark browns are going to be. Just painting around that bluish little strip of masking fluid. All the time the picture's becoming clearer. Some of these videos have been speeded up. We didn't want you all sitting there watching paint dry particularly. There's the eye coming. But a lot of it is controlling the amount of water you're using, and as you get on towards the end of the painting, your brush is going to be much drier when you're putting in the final details. Over to you, Janet. We've got a little break here.
Unmute myself. There we are. I was mesmerized there, Lyn, watching you painting. It's beautiful. Thank you, Lyn. It's amazing to see how a beautiful image can emerge from the page under such expert brushstrokes. You make it look very easy, though, of course, we all appreciate the years of experience that have gone into it, Lyn. I'm not going to say much more. I think I'm going to hand over to Giacomo, who's going to say a little bit more about the work we're doing in Ghana, for which we're raising funds this week. during the Green Match appeal, and he's going to introduce a video. So over to you, Giacomo.
That's right. Thanks, Janet. Yes, I want to show you a video we made in the past few weeks with Kwame, Isaac, and Gideon about the work they are doing in Ghana and that we are raising funds for now during this Green Match appeal. And just to tell you a bit about the work, because we're very excited about it, together with them and Janet, we have been planning how to set up a new honey and beeswax trading business out of Doncorkrum in Afram Plains. And since we started mentoring beekeepers in this area, they've been making so many beehives, and the swarms have just as surely moved in, and it's quite plain to see that they will have tons of honey and beeswax to sell in a few months' time. And it's also clear that this extra income will really make a big difference for many families, but only if we can build a good market for their products. So we're setting up a system to buy honeycomb from the communities that are scattered around quite a big region and process it for resale in a central place and ensure that the honey and beeswax can meet the standards of the most demanding of buyers. So the funds we're raising this week will support this work so that we can continue mentoring these beekeepers to make sure that they can maintain the quality of the products and take full advantage of these opportunities that are on the horizon. So here's the video. I'll show it now, and you'll see Kwame, Isaac, and Gideon, and they'll tell you more from their angle.
Yay!
In 2019, we visited Doncorkrum and met Gideon. Gideon has established some beehives here, so we visited him and we got to know that the farmers in the French community of the Dija National Park have had a lot of confrontations trying to go into the park to harvest honey, wild honey. So these wild hunters sometimes were confronted, they were arrested, and sometimes jailed. So we saw an opportunity that the abundance of bees and a lot of forage in this agricultural landscape and then also the park was a good resource for people to keep bees.
We had our first training in hive making, especially using locally available materials like borassus and palm fronds. And 2 years later, the people have made a lot of hives with a lot of colonies, and they are doing well for themselves.
So far, we have trained more than 1,000 farmers to keep bees with the borassus and basket hives. And we are still training people. We have over 1,500 beehives installed, and many of them are having a colony. and they are doing well. Last year, we harvested small honey, about 1 ton, and we hope to multiply that this year.
The future looks so good. More communities are asking to join. Recently, the COVID-19 situation even brought in people from the cities who had lost their jobs, and they came to the villages and saw what was happening and asked to join. So currently we are collaborating with the Wildlife Division of the Forestry Commission to extend our project to 9 more communities in the eastern corridors of the national park. And we hope in the next few days, we are going to begin training workshop for them to start building their hives and attract swarms into them to manage.
No, my, you know, my children said a day, now,
Thank you, Giacomo. Great film. I hope that's given you a flavour of the work that Bees for Development Ghana are undertaking. And if you'd like to follow more about our work, please do sign up for our regular e-news where we share about the progress of our partners, not just in Ghana, but elsewhere. Thank you very much. So I think I'll hand back to Lyn to continue with the class. Thank you, Lyn.
Thank you. What an inspiring film. Thank you. We're back to our last little bit of video now, and grateful thanks to Sean, who's been very helpful with his technical knowledge and stitching these little bits of video together. So darker, 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 here we go. Getting on with the stripes of the bee, building up colour in the darker areas and still letting every layer of paint dry between times. If you don't let it dry, you just get colours mixing and you lose the freshness of it and it becomes rather sludgy. So all the time my brush strokes are very small and trying to work in the same direction as the hairs of the bee to just show that immense hairiness that we're dealing with. Tiny little strokes, and this is speeded up a bit, as you can see. There's a reasonable amount of tan colour just under the wings, but towards the end of the abdomen, it really these is really quite a dark bee, and as you know, they do vary in colour quite a lot. Beginning to get a bit of green on the leaves there, and those will start taking shape in a bit. And looking at the wings now. So there's quite a dark edge to them, but you're leaving a lot of clear whiteness for the shine, and sometimes the wings are reflecting colours of the flowers nearby. If they're on a bright coloured flower, you'll get that colour reflecting in the wings, and sometimes they shine a little bit blue as well. So you're looking at the photo for the colours to pick up, and the wings are made from the same chitin as the exoskeleton. So underneath it all, they are a bit yellow. Lots more hairs going in, darkening areas. But we will eventually be removing that masking fluid that's on there. And you can either use a rubber, again, when the paint's dry, so you'll be smudging it, you'll be using a rubber or your finger. So beginning to get a bit of shape in the flowers. The photograph showed the flowers against a dark, unfocused, leafy background, so the edge was clear, but on the white paper you're going to have to make a slightly stronger definition of the edge of the petals, especially on the right hand side where they're in the shade. So the much stronger yellow inside and also a bit greeny. So the masking fluid's coming off. Paint dry because you're wiping it off. Or you can rub it off with your finger. It's just little rubbery blobs that come off. But now we can shade in from the edges of the bee, and we've got a nice clear middle of the eye where it catches the shine, and along the legs. So putting a bit more shading in the inside of the flowers there. And again, using two brushes where I'm just dampening an edge and putting in a darker colour. So a much drier brush and more detail going in, and eventually the little bits of pink around the edge of the flowers, on the petals, detail of the bee's legs, and there's no antennae there yet. A little bit of shading around the stamens with the pollen on, just to make them stand out. And you can see in the bottom left, I've got some magnifying glasses on, which are used by model makers. They're quite handy. They go over your glasses. So final touches. And then we'll be doing the antennae. It's a pretty little flower, considering it's so teeny. It's just about the size of your little fingernail. So I think you've seen most of it now, and I hope you've learned a little bit of the process of doing this. So that's it on the painting, and I would strongly recommend you look at the work of Valerie Littlewood, who is probably one of the best painters of bees around at the moment, and she tends to concentrate on solitary bees and bumblebees, but she does do a few honeybees as well. And the painters listed at the bottom tend to be butterflies more than anything, but it's still interesting looking at the detail of painters who work with insects. So to beekeepers who want to paint, I say find a class to join, and painters who are interested in beekeeping, contact your local association and see if they're having an open day. So thank you for watching, and good luck with your painting.
Thank you, Lyn. That's amazing. We really, really appreciate it. What a marvelous class in not only painting and drawing, but also the observation. That's what I found so interesting. I'll never look at a red currant flower in the same way ever again. Thank you, Lyn. That's great. So if anybody's got any questions for Lyn, now's your chance. So you can either post it in the chat, or if I can see you, I can you can put yourself off mute and you can ask. We had one question from on YouTube, Lyn, asking, let's see if I can find the question. They were asking about the size of your brushes. You said you use a very fine brush, but when you start off, some of your strokes are there's quite a lot of wash going on.
Yes.
And why do you need a fine brush for that?
I would use the watercolor brushes. I would use a 4 for the washes, and anything, I'd probably use a 4, a 2, and a 1, something like that. The 1 being really quite fine.
Thank you. Thanks, Lyn. And I've got another question here. The question is asking, says, I suppose it's up to the artist. Different artists have different styles, but do you personally strive for accuracy or suggestion of the subject?
I think you can do either. I mean, I'm really picky and I love the detail. But I think the more sketchy paintings look just as lovely, and you can you almost get the detail by imagining it. You know, bits are left out, but you know they're there. So different styles appeal to different people. Because I come from the botanical drawing side of things, I do love the nitty-gritty of it all.
Yes. And I remember, Lyn, when we were doing the practice last week, you were talking about the red currant flower and how you felt it was important to actually understand how the anthers and the stamens actually worked in the flower before you attempted to draw it. Something that most of us probably wouldn't think of. That was
again, that's part of the botanical painting side of things. I like to see the structure of the flower and how it's constructed, what the stamens do, and even what happens at the seed phase. It's really nice to draw the whole life cycle of the plant. But as far as bees are concerned, there's just such fascinating life cycles of all the different solitary bees and our bumblebees as well. So let's get out there and tell the world about bees.
Yes, we can all agree with that. We can all agree with that. Lyn, here's a question. How the painting that you just showed us, you prepared it in advance and it was speeded up. How long would a piece of work like that take?
The actual painting itself, quite a lot of it is preparing for it. The painting itself would be maybe a couple of days, and then a certain amount of research beforehand and that sort of thing. So you're going to be the best part of a week fiddling about. It depends how many hours you put into it, obviously, but just doing it at home in my own time and enjoying it. A painting takes as long as it takes. You sort of know when it's finished.
Of course.
Could you recommend an easy flower for beginners, Lyn?
In relation to bees, something like a geranium, a simple cup shape, geranium or buttercup, those sort of things would be a nice, easy shape to start with.
Okay, give it a shot. It was very inspiring and mesmerizing to see you put color to that.
Are there any more questions? Maybe I can just hand it over to the floor if anybody wants to go for it and ask Lyn a question. Please do. Did anybody attempt a drawing or painting during the class like to show us? Is that Vicky?
Yes, I had a little quick go at a painting, but I'm not I've hardly done any watercolor things, so I did. You see it?
Well done.
Oh, that's
Lovely.
Nico.
Can you see it?
Yes. Excellent.
Wow.
Well
that's
done.
actually a-
Fantastic. Very encouraging. Keep going.
Thank you. It's been very inspiring.
Good, good, good.
And then Nico as well.
Polly?
Yeah,
Can
look
we
at
see
that.
that one again, Polly?
Excellent.
Hello. Yes, we have got a mother and daughter combo here. So this is a 8-year-old Sophia who has drawn this bee while Lyn was presenting. And this is
wow.
Very good.
Talent.
and this is my attempt.
Oh, lovely. And you've got some colour on it too.
Yes.
Well done.
Thank you. It was really, really fascinating to
Lovely.
listen to.
Nice.
Thank you.
Keep going. Keep going.
And
Yes, we will
Polly?
finish it. Thank you.
Thank you, Aniko. Thank you. Can we have a spotlight on Polly?
No, it's to do the battery on my computer.
Great. Thank you very much. Has anybody got any more questions for Lyn or for the bee or for Bees for Development? So I think with that, I'd like to, I'd like to say what an enormous thank you to Lyn. So much preparation, preparing all the videos and drawings. Oh, I've got another last question. Lyn, do you have a favorite bee?
The quietest queen bee that I've got is always my favorite because all her progeny will be nice and quiet to handle.
You don't try and get your bees to sit for you, so you can.
Some are quieter than others.
Thank you, Lyn. So thank you so much. It's absolutely wonderful. You put so much effort in, and your willingness to share your experience and expertise has been marvelous. I've always think as a beekeeper, you learn to observe and take note of what's going on around you. And of course, it makes me realize that an artist, you're looking at the world through a similar observing, but with ever greater detail. Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you very much, Lyn.
Thank you, Lyn.
My pleasure.
So with that, I think we're going to close. Thank you to everybody for attending. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you for showing interest in Bees for Development. Thank you for your support, for stalwart supporters. You've been helping us for many years. Thank you so much. And for people new to beekeeping, you're very welcome. Please do sign up to our newsletter and visit us whenever you can. So thank you very much. And with that, we'll say good night and goodbye.
I need some mead. Mead is what I need. Sundowner in the garden time. Welcome to this virtual line. Greetings from sunny Tobago with the rainforest where bees echo. So kiss me, honey, honey, kiss me. Trill me, honey, honey, trill me. With royal jelly you can fill my cup. Oh, honey, honey, don't stop. Sing the chorus. Kiss me, honey, honey, kiss me. Trill